This afternoon, I'd like to cover what we've been doing with the compliance and service delivery. Next slide. So the week of March 9th is essentially when the city of El Paso began making preparations for the onset of the coronavirus. And during that time, an email was established that was named covidcompliance@elpasotexas.gov. And that email went directly into the boxes of personnel at the fire department and the health department. Once the email started rolling in after Friday the 13th, the week of March 15th, there were so many that rather than have it dump into individual mailboxes, we linked it to the epstrong.org website. And so the website was modified to be able to offer various options to intake the email into different categories. And you'll see on one of the next slides what those categories are. Over the next 6 weeks, all the emails that were received were screened and sorted into 4 areas, either for fire PD for the immediate needs and responses, the Parks Department for any park-related complaint, the Health Department for any of the restaurants, and the ESD code compliance for all of the other complaints. We received 5,682 complaints during that 6-week period, and they were all addressed appropriately. During the week of April 27th, about that time is when most of the residents had been educated, and I'd like to thank the efforts of all the task force members that were involved in the outreach and education, because without their help, I believe that the emails and the complaints would have continued to be going on an upward trend. But because the residents understood what the rulings were from both the governor and the mayor and the judge, they dropped to less than 20 per day. In order to address those few in a more expedient manner, it was decided to route them, rather than through an email system on the epstrong.org website, route them directly to the PD non-emergency phone number. So that's what we did the first week of May. Next slide. And you can see here from this slide, this is the epstrong.org picture of the web page. And so when residents logged into this site, they could go into 9 different categories and get information concerning travel, closures, hours. And you can see right there the area for the compliant complaints. Next slide. So, of course, all of the officers that were out in the field were focused on the voluntary compliance, basically education and outreach. The ability to issue citations still remain with the police and fire officers. And so the Parks Department, the Health Department, and the ESD code officers were all working on compliance efforts to adhere to the state directives. And as you all well know, those directives change pretty frequently there at the beginning. So that from one day to the next, it was required to have masks or not required to have masks, and whether you could be open or not open or spaced out, not spaced out, but appropriately distanced. And so we worked with the outreach and education to continue to educate all of the residents, and we were able to achieve voluntary compliance with most of the complaints that we got. Once people understood they were in violation, 95 to 96% of the people were happy to comply. We did have those house parties that were a real problem at the beginning. The parks officers continue to assist with enforcement at the parks. Next. So as of this last weekend, we have data here from the Fire Marshal and the Health Department, El Paso Police Department, 211, 311, epidemiology calls in the hotline, as well as the sheriff's calls. So you can see that all the officers have been very busy over the last 2 months responding to these phone calls and emails. Next slide. And that same information, of course, is on the email update that you receive each evening. In terms of some Metro service delivery, passengers that are displaying symptoms or who were COVID-19 positive should not ride. That placard was put in the windows of every single bus. Some Metro also contracted with Project Amistad to be able to transport COVID individuals who otherwise do not have any other means to get to a test site. Some Metro routes are still running today on the Sunday schedule, and we've had just a few complaints about the reduced routes, especially now that more businesses are starting to open. More and more people are going to be needing rides to work. Next slide. Our next area that we're going to cover is by Jessica Herrera, and she's going to cover the economic recovery.